In a quiet, well-to-do suburban neighborhood, a family is found dead.
This is not the kind of place where murders happen.
Neighbors have noticed lights burning day and night in the 3-story Victorian mansion for the past month, but there's no sign anyone is home.
The man responsible for the mass murder would elude law enforcement officials for almost 18 years.
Meticulously laid plans allow him to successfully make his escape.
But the boogeyman of Westfield would eventually be discovered.
The unsolved ones, we have to stand up
and approach these cases in a way outside the box.
Let the world know, for those out there that did commit a murder, there are people that are coming after you.
There's just a lot of good people trying to do the right thing.
Because it's something that you have to be passionate about.
Solve this, bring some peace to the family at least. Just doing my job.
At 10:10 p.m. on the night of Wednesday, December 7th, 1971, police in Westfield, New Jersey, receive a call from a woman on Hillside Avenue.
She hasn't seen any members of the family or any activity at the house for a few weeks.
The bodies of Helen List, aged 46, and her 3 children, Patricia, 16, Frederick, 13, and John, 15, are discovered by police, laid out on sleeping bags in the ballroom at the back of the main floor in the 3-story house.
Helen is wearing a dressing gown. All 3 kids are wearing coats. They've all been shot dead.
Oddly, religious music is playing over the house intercom system.
A 5th body is found in the hallway of the 3rd floor. Alma List, John's 85-year-old mother, resides in living quarters on the top floor of the house.
She is shot in the bedroom. Her knees break as she falls to the floor before she's dragged to the hallway on a carpet runner.
2 slices of bread in the toaster of her kitchenette lead police to speculate her murder may have taken place in the morning.
Lights are blazing throughout the 19-room mansion on this dark and rainy night as investigators comb the house looking for clues as to how this tragedy came to be. One person missing from the scene is John Emil List, the family's 46-year-old father. In a filing cabinet, police find 2 guns and a 5-page letter, handwritten on yellow-lined paper. It's addressed to the pastor of the Lutheran church the family belongs to.
The letter to Reverend Rowinkel is confessional. It leaves no doubt to the fact that it's List's family laying on the floor in the ballroom. It's dated November 9th, 1 month ago.
The family's blue 4-door Chevrolet is missing from the house. A 50-state alarm is issued, citing John Emil List as wanted for mass murder. It goes to every FBI field office, every post office, and to other law enforcement agencies across the country. The investigation begins. Police interview relatives, friends, teachers, and neighbors.
A portrait emerges of a family that has remained aloof from neighbors during the 5 years they have lived in the big white house with green shutters.
John List was known to get irritable around small children and dogs. One neighbor recalls taking a pie to the house as a welcome gesture when the family moved in, only to be told by John, "We are not a friendly people, and we do not like to get involved with neighbors socially." John List. But a physician who lives next door to the Lists thinks the family seemed normal in a neighborhood where executives can move in and out without making friends.
He recalls List playing baseball with the boys in the backyard and driving them to Little League games. To the neighbors, Helen List is the most mysterious member of the family. Someone who's rarely, if ever, seen outside. Someone who's been deemed an extreme recluse.
The neighbor across the street tells police that she hadn't seen Helen since the family moved in 5 years earlier.
While the List's neighbors may have varying views about the family, they would likely all agree on one thing: nobody really knew them very well. The List children are popular and active in youth groups. 16-year-old Patricia attends Westfield High School, where she's a keen participant in drama productions and has had starring roles in school plays.
But Pat, as she's known to her friends, is frequently absent from school. They've heard it's because her mother wants her to cook at home.
They'd hear stories about Helen, but never from Patricia herself, who would become silent when asked about her parents.
Her brothers, Frederick and John, attend Roosevelt Junior High. It's across the street from Redeemer Lutheran Church, the church the family goes to.
The church is the center of their social lives. John List taught Sunday school there.
The List family moves to Westfield from Rochester, New York, in 1965. John has plans to restore the historic home that features marble fireplaces and a Tiffany skylight.
The mansion's ballroom held chamber concerts, and in recent years, an art gallery.
But once the Lists occupy the house, the ballroom is virtually empty. In fact, the whole house is sparsely furnished.
John List, an accountant by profession, was riding the crest of an economic wave when he purchased the $90,000 house in 1965.
It's an affluent neighborhood, home to executives and professionals.
At the time, he is the vice president of the First National Bank of New Jersey, on an equal footing professionally with other homeowners in the neighborhood.
The First Federal Savings and Loan Association of Westfield gives him a substantial mortgage, feeling he can handle it.
List moves up the executive ladder, taking a position a short time later with the American Photographic Corporation of New York City.
He's making $23,500 a year. That's equivalent to $160,000 today.
But things begin to take a downturn for him. The economy takes a nosedive, and Helen has a nervous breakdown that requires expensive treatment at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City.
List finds he needs a second and then a third mortgage on the house to put food on the table and keep up with all the bills. Dreams of restoring the house are long gone.
List changes jobs again, going to work in January of 1971 for the State Mutual Life Insurance Company of America, but his salary is half of what he was making previously.
His mother, Alma, has $200,000 in savings. He begins skimming money from her bank account to cover his 3 mortgages.
$200,000 is a lot of money in 1971, close to $1.5 million today. Despite all that money, she may not have even known about the situation.
Desperate to save face about their financial difficulties, List keeps the grim reality of their circumstances from everyone, including his family.
The principles of self-reliance and the Protestant work ethic he learned growing up in a strict religious home forbid him from showing any signs of weakness or failure.
You could argue his psychology was reflective of the time. Rigid gender roles in post-war America called for the man to be the protector and provider for the family.
By November of 1971, List is an independent agent for the insurance company he had begun working for in January. As such, it would be up to him to go out and find clients.
But he's been staying at the train station during the day, reading the papers, napping, letting his family think he's at work.
His desperate plan to resolve the financial straitjacket he's in is revealed in the letter he left for Eugene Rehwinkle. In it, List explains how he feels it would be better to send his family to heaven than to see them face the social disgrace of bankruptcy or having to go on welfare.
The letter details other reasons that have contributed to his decision to murder his family. He believes they were slipping away from their Christian roots.
He's worried about Patricia's growing interest in becoming an actress, a profession he considers immoral. And Helen has stopped going to church some time ago.
His thinking is that by killing them now, he will send them to heaven and save them from making further mistakes and possibly going to hell.
5 days before he shoots them, ironically, he asks his family what they think should be done with their bodies after they die.
This would indicate the murders were premeditated, that John List was planning them. He didn't just lose it the day he shot each member of his family.
The two guns used in the murders are a 9mm from 1918 and a .22 caliber Colt revolver.
He bought new ammunition and went to a range to practice.
Helen, Patricia, and Frederick are each shot once in the head. John, the eldest son, suffers 10 gunshot wounds to the head and chest, either as a result of struggling or trying to escape.
On Friday, December 10th, 2 days after the discovery of the bodies in their dilapidated mansion, the family car is found 40 miles away in the parking lot of John F. Kennedy International Airport in Queens, New York.
It had been ticketed on November 10th, 1 month earlier.
Police now know when List fled, but figuring out where he has gone from one of America's busiest airports seems like an insurmountable task. On the night of December 7th, 1971, acting on a tip from neighbors, police enter a residence on Hillside Avenue in Westview, New Jersey.
They discover the decomposing bodies of 4 people who have been dead for approximately 1 month.
And on the 3rd floor, a 5th body is also found. A letter left behind by the father of the family, John Emil List, explains why he killed his wife, mother, and 3 teenage children. A religious man, he addresses the confessional note to the pastor of the Lutheran Church where he teaches Sunday school.
With the juxtaposition of List's strange moral convictions and the murder of his family, the police have a deeply perplexing case on their hands.
Two days later, on December 10th, John List's car is found in the parking lot at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. It had been ticketed on November 10th, the day after the murders. This was in the days before airlines had computers to keep track of flights and reservations. Everything was done on paper.
The prospect of finding John List's name amongst the thousands of people who would have been departing JFK that day seems like an impossibility.
The only way to check would be to check every passenger who left the airport over a 2-day period. Thousands. That's unfeasible. Police Chief James Moran. While List's trail may have gone cold at the airport, the police investigation into the murders is anything but.
They're checking public records, financials, employment history, interviewing anyone with information that can help them understand what could have led to the familicide.
Details emerge about List's movements that begin to reveal a cleverly constructed plan to explain the family's absence.
On November 9th, the day of the murders, he stops the family's milk delivery and tells his postman, James Parsons, to stop delivering mail.
he notifies the children's schools that the family will be away on a holiday for a few weeks. List makes a call to Patricia's drama teacher, Mrs. Barbara Sheridan, telling her he's just put his wife and 3 children on a plane to North Carolina to visit his sick mother-in-law there, and that Patricia will miss the rehearsal in 2 days' time.
Police believe she's the last person John List spoke to.
Patricia's high school sends a social worker to check on things after she's been absent for 2 weeks. There's no answer at the house.
Her drama workshop teacher, David Iliano, who's close to her, was expecting a postcard from her, knowing she was going to North Carolina.
When he doesn't receive any word from her for 2 or 3 weeks, he encourages the neighbors to contact the police.
On Saturday, December 11th, Reverend Waywinkle conducts a funeral service for Helen and the 3 children. 350 people attend the service at Redeemer Lutheran Church.
An FBI agent and police observe the crowd at the service and later at the graveside.
The 4 simple metal coffins are taken to Westfield's Fairview Cemetery to be buried side by side in a plot purchased by the church, while Alma's body is returned to her home in Michigan. The day following the funeral, Eugene Raywinkle makes a public plea to List, asking John to contact him. "John, as your pastor, I am still very much your friend who will always support you and stand by you and help you. Please contact me. Reverend Eugene Raywinkle."
List has a stepdaughter living in Kalamazoo, Brenda DeYoung, Helen's stepdaughter from her first marriage. She also begs John to get in contact with her.
Neither Raywinkle or Brenda hear from him. A week after the bodies are found, List is indicted on murder charges by a Union County grand jury.
The house on Hillside Avenue quickly becomes an item of morbid fascination. People drive by and stop to look. Children sneak in, hunting for souvenirs.
A police officer is stationed at the house to turn away curious onlookers. The property is roped off and a police barricade is erected along the 200-foot frontage.
John Emil List was born in 1925 into a German Lutheran family that had settled in Frankenmuth, Michigan in the late 1880s. He is the only child of Alma and John Frederick List.
His mother is domineering and overprotective of her son. John is indoctrinated with the principles of his parents' faith from a young age.
In 1943, just before he turns 18, he joins the Army for the duration of World War II and serves as a second lieutenant.
Afterwards, he earns a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's in accounting from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
List meets Helen Morris Taylor, a widow who has recently lost her husband in the war and who has a young daughter named Brenda.
John is serving in the Korean War when he and Helen marry on December 1st, 1951.
When the war ends 2 years later, John goes to work as an executive accountant. He and Helen start a family.
But the marriage isn't a happy one. Helen drinks and appears overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for 3 young children.
There's a secret behind Helen's increasingly erratic behavior. In 1947, she contracted syphilis from her first husband. She never tells John.
Helen is hospitalized in Walter Reed Hospital for 6 months during 1947 and 1948. Doctors inject her with malaria, an accepted military treatment for syphilis.
The idea was that malaria would kill the syphilis spirochete. It didn't. The malaria ran its course, but the syphilis spread throughout her body.
Although it becomes dormant and Helen is no longer contagious, it can still damage her internal organs. Eventually, it would affect her brain. List has no idea of Helen's medical condition when he marries her in 1951, or her reason for insisting they marry in Baltimore.
It's a deliberate ploy on her part. Most states at the time required a premarital syphilis test. Maryland didn't.
She manages to keep her condition a secret for 22 years until 1969, when doctors finally discovered the reason behind her deteriorating health.
By the time the family moves to Westfield in 1965, her syphilis is in the tertiary stage, and she's blind in her right eye.
By the time syphilis reaches its third and final stage, which can take 10 to 30 years, it will be affecting multiple organs, including the brain. It can cause dementia, paralysis, and even death.
It's little wonder that the neighbors never saw her or that she never attended church with John.
But in fact, Helen had never shared John's devotion to the church. His mother, Alma, had always considered her an unfit wife for her son.
There was no love between Helen and her mother-in-law. Alma's presence in the Westfield house would have done nothing to help family dynamics.
By late 1971, failing financially and professionally, it has all just become too much for List. On Tuesday, the 9th of November, John List decides to send the whole family to heaven before things can get any worse. Helen List and her 3 children are laid to rest on December 11th, 1971. 1 month and 4 days after her husband, John List, shot each of them and dragged their bodies into the ballroom of their deteriorating mansion.
When List's car is discovered in the parking lot of John Kennedy Airport, an international warrant is issued for his arrest.
A week after the bodies are discovered, List is indicted on murder charges by a Union County grand jury.
For weeks, Westfield police pursue all the local leads until they've exhausted everyone. Despite the fact they know who committed the murders, the case will remain unsolved unless List is found. The FBI have joined the investigation. By the summer of 1972, hundreds of leads have been checked, but Westfield Police Chief James Moran describes them as just a lot of dead ends. People think they've seen him in just about every state, from New York to California.
Authorities have checked the passenger rolls of all ships leaving New York around the time of List's disappearance. Union County Prosecutor Carl Ash notes that List has the money to travel for a long time.
Police Chief James Moran strongly believes he's still alive. You don't plan an escape like that, then do yourself in. In spite of the time that has lapsed since the investigation began, Moran is convinced that List will eventually be captured. I believe that the way he's going to be caught is that somebody's going to see him and remember him. The passing of time doesn't make it any less probable. Assistant County Prosecutor Michael Mitzner is less optimistic. As time passes, the general public forgets what he looks like, and he has more time to cover his tracks.
The media keep the story alive, publishing stories on the anniversaries of the murders, hoping someone will come forward with new information.
Wherever John List is, he is still escaping detection. When Westfield Police Chief James Moran is set to retire in December 1986, he has never stopped carrying a wanted poster of List in his pocket.
It's been 15 years now since the murders. Over the years, the FBI has had over 20 agents working on the case. There have been List sightings everywhere from the Midwest to East Germany.
Ed Johnson, the 5th Union County prosecutor to work on the case, firmly believes List has a new identity. Johnson is focused on List's religious convictions, what he calls the warped sense of Christianity that allowed the one-time Sunday school teacher to commit the meticulously planned crime.
Based on a letter List left behind, Johnson thinks List believed he was saving his children by killing them.
In List's view, their extra years of life wouldn't have mattered. This is what allowed him to live with the crime. Ed Johnson, Union County prosecutor.
The prosecutor's office sends out a circular to hundreds of Lutheran churches that show a sketch of List as he would look now at the age of 61.
Fast forward to January 1989. It's nearly 18 years since the Westfield murders. Frank Maranka of the Union County Prosecutor's Homicide Unit contacts the producers of the TV show, America's Most Wanted.
The hope is that if the show does an episode on the List murders, someone in the viewing audience might phone in a tip.
There's just one problem. At the end of each episode, a photo of the wanted person is shown. But the most recent photo of List is several years old. What would he look like in 1989?
The show's host, John Walsh, had encountered the science of forensic sculpting a few years earlier when he met forensic reconstruction artist Frank Bender.
America's Most Wanted asks Bender to add 18 years to List's face.
Bender gets to work, studying old family photos and gathering information about List's hereditary traits and past eating and drinking habits.
He also learns that List has a surgical scar underneath his right ear. He researches what that scar would look like 18 years later.
Bender likes to try to get inside the mind of his subjects. He teams up with forensic psychologist Richard Walter to get a better understanding of who or what John List is.
Bender then fashions a bust from clay that shows List wearing a conservative suit and tie, the clothes people are most likely to see him in. He gives List a receding hairline, a mouth turned down at the corners, sagging jowls, and a scar beneath his right ear.
Bender believes that eyeglasses are a key component to representing an aging John List.
He thinks List would favor glasses that give him an air of authority and importance, the opposite of failure.
After looking at dozens of pairs of glasses, Bender chooses a pair of dark, heavy frames. His sculpture of List is seen by 22 million people on the Sunday, May 21st broadcast of America's Most Wanted.
The result is uncanny. Bender's sculpture is a phenomenal representation of an aging John List.
Studio's phone bank receives 125 calls within 2 hours.
Westfield Police Detective Lieutenant Bernard Tracy, who helped America's Most Wanted develop and film the episode, is present in the TV studio on the night. He believes there's only one call that really counts. Detective Lieutenant Bernard Tracy. In Aurora, Colorado, 15 miles east of Denver, Wanda Flannery and her daughter watch the broadcast. She asks her son-in-law to call the televised number for reporting tips. She has some information for them about a man named Robert Clark. On the 9th of November, 1971, John List methodically shot his family in cold blood in their Westfield, New Jersey home.
His car was found at John F. Kennedy International Airport a month later. He has eluded authorities ever since.
On the evening of Sunday, May 21st, 1989, 22 million television viewers watched the story of the List murders on America's Most Wanted.
A bust created by forensic sculptor Frank Bender is featured on the program, showing John List as how he might look in his mid-60s.
Wanda Flannery in Aurora, Colorado, recognizes the man who used to be her neighbor. He was an accountant and a churchgoer, and married to her friend Dolores. His name was Robert Clark.
She tells authorities that the Clarks moved east to Richmond, Virginia 2 years earlier.
The America's Most Wanted broadcast isn't the first time that Wanda suspects that Robert Clark is a wanted man.
An avid reader of supermarket tabloids, she'd pointed out a story about John List to Dolores 2 years earlier.
But Dolores refuses to believe that her husband, Bob, could be a fugitive mass murderer.
On Friday, May 26th, 5 days after the America's Most Wanted episode airs, FBI Special Agent Kevin August receives Wanda Flannery's tip.
After the Memorial Day weekend, on June 1st, he drives 25 miles from his downtown office to the Richmond suburb of Midlothian.
In their modest bungalow in the planned community of Brandermill in Midlothian, Kevin August finds Dolores Clark home alone. He shows her a wanted poster that features an 18-year-old sketch of John List.
Her hands begin to tremble. She goes to another room, comes back with her 1985 wedding photo.
August is stunned. There's no question, Robert Clark and John List are one and the same person.
On November 10th, 1971, List walks away from the carnage in his 19-room mansion and drives to John F. Kennedy International Airport, where he leaves his car and takes a bus into New York City.
He then travels overland to Denver, Colorado, surfacing there in 1973 as Robert Peter Clark.
He gets a new social security number. He finds a job as a fry cook at a hotel and gets a job as an accountant at H&R Block.
All the while, he remains active in the Lutheran Church, joining a congregation.
In 1977, List, as Robert P. Clark, meets a widow named Dolores Miller at a church function. He marries her in 1985, and they remain in Colorado until February 1988, when they move to Richmond, Virginia. On June 1st, 1989, 9 days after the America's Most Wanted episode airs, FBI agents walk into the Richmond accounting firm where Robert Clark works. He refuses to acknowledge he is John List. Nevertheless, he goes quietly with the agents.
Amazingly, the glasses he's wearing are virtually identical to the ones forensic sculptor Frank Bender chose for his bust of List.
At the police station, fingerprinting confirms that Robert Clark and John List are the same person. And Clark has a scar below his right ear.
Clark's prints match those on a gun permit application List had filled out a month before the murders.
A month after his arrest, List is transported from Virginia back to New Jersey. Still refusing to identify himself as John List, he signs the extradition document as Robert Clark.
List may have clung to his deceptive strategies for so long that by now he finds it impossible to let his guard down. Or he might hope he can deceive the police about his identity.
On July 9th, 1989, John List is arraigned in a New Jersey courtroom for the murders of his mother, his wife, and his 3 children.
He pleads not guilty. His bail is set at $5 million. His trial date is set for December 4th.
He's incarcerated in Union County Jail in Elizabeth, New Jersey, a few towns east of Westfield, while he awaits the start of his trial. Sometime after his arrest, List is examined by psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Simmering. Simmering reported that List showed no evidence of anything that approached genuine remorse. He's a cold man, psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Simmering. At the pre-trial hearing, List's letter to Pastor Raywinkle is released after the Superior Court judge allows it as evidence, denying a motion by the defense that the document is protected by the priest-penitent privilege. The whole story is about to become public. 9 days after the America's Most Wanted episode airs, John List is arrested at the accounting office where he works. He maintains he is Robert P. Clark. At his trial, List's defense lawyers argue that he suffers from PTSD as a result of his service in both the Second World War and the Korean War. December 4th, 1989.
Psychologists called by the defense suggest List was going through a midlife crisis. For his part, List claims he was innocent because of his mental state at the time.
As the trial progresses, the details about the events of that fateful day in November 1971 and the order in which they took place become known. On the morning of Tuesday, November 9th, List takes the 2 handguns out to his car to load them, then comes back into the house.
He shoots his wife in the head while she sits at the kitchen table drinking her morning coffee.
He places her body on a sleeping bag and drags it into the ballroom. Then he cleans up the blood in the kitchen. He doesn't want the children to see it when they arrive home from school later in the day.
He climbs the 2 flights of stairs to the top floor, shoots his mother Alma in the head, and drags her body on a carpet runner into the hallway.
In his letter to Raywinkle, he explains she was too heavy to move, presumably referring to why she wasn't placed with the others in the ballroom.
Then he goes out to the post office to stop the family's mail. At the bank, he cashes in $2,100 worth of his mother's savings bonds. Returning home, he makes himself a sandwich. It's lunchtime. He's hungry. He writes notes to the children's schools, letting authorities know that the family will be away on holiday for a few weeks in North Carolina, and asking for Patricia, Frederick, and John to be excused from classes. Patricia is the first to arrive home from school that day. He shoots her while she still has her coat on. Youngest son Frederick arrives home next and meets the same fate.
Each of them is shot in the head, either with the 9mm pistol he had bought as a souvenir of World War II or the .22 caliber target pistol.
But when eldest son John, his favorite and his namesake, arrives home, List has an unexpected fight on his hands.
Whether John Jr. struggles with his father or makes an attempt to escape, List ends up firing 10 slugs into the boy's head and chest using both guns.
As evening approaches, John List sits at the desk, composing a 5-page letter to the pastor of his church, the one man whom he feels would be able to understand his plight.
As a confessional document, List needs to get his thoughts down on paper. It may be an attempt to justify what he'd done, or he may actually believe he can earn some leniency with authorities if they can catch up with him.
In it, he says he hopes that one day God will forgive him and he'll be able to join his family in heaven. That night, John List sleeps in the house in which he'd slain his family and laid their bodies out in the ballroom. The next morning, he turns on the lights throughout the mansion, lowers the thermostat to keep the house cool, and tunes the radio to a religious music station, piping music throughout the house over the intercom system. Then, he walks out the door.
The house would burn down a few months later. The cause of the fire is never determined.
At his sentencing hearing, List denies direct responsibility for his actions, telling the court, "I feel that because of my mental state at the time, I was unaccountable for what happened."
The judge is not persuaded, saying John Emil List is without remorse and without honor.
He hands down the maximum allowed penalty, 5 terms of life imprisonment to be served consecutively.
In 2002, List gives newswoman Connie Chung a lengthy interview from New Jersey State Prison, where he is serving his time. He is 76 years old.
This will be the first time he's spoken publicly about what he had done.
Of the lead up to the tragedy, List tells her he felt like he was letting his family down. I grew up with the idea that you should provide for your family, and to do that, you had to be a success in the job that you had, or you're a failure. And that was not a good thing to be. John List. About his logic at the time, he tells Chung, "It was my belief that if you kill yourself, you won't go to heaven. So eventually I got to the point where I felt I could kill them. Hopefully, they would go to heaven, and then maybe I would have a chance to later confess my sins to God and get forgiveness. It's just like D-Day. You go in, there's no stopping after you start." John List. 6 years after his interview with Connie Chung, List is taken ill in 2008 with severe pneumonia and transferred to St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton. He dies 4 days later, on March 21st.
Complications cause a massive blood clot, blocking blood vessels of both lungs.
4 days later, no one has stepped forward to claim the body. Attempts to reach Dolores Clark are unsuccessful.
John List managed to evade the authorities for 17 years, despite the exhaustive efforts of investigators nationwide. The case might have remained unsolved were it not for the artistry of a gifted forensic sculptor and a neighbor who felt compelled to make a phone call. In 1986, a young man is brand new to San Diego, having just driven across country in his new car in search of job opportunities. Though he's here looking for work, he's open to new experiences, and on his first day in town, he makes a new friend, Stacy Littleton. The next morning, Cyrus's body is found on a rural road.
He was likely dumped and dragged from his shoulders and head area.
As the city experiences a drastic increase in violent crime and murder, the resources to hunt down Cyrus's killer become limited. The case gets shelved, and 30 years go by. But rookie cold case detective Troy Dugal is determined to find justice.
I took that on as kind of a challenge.
With almost no evidence remaining in the case, it would take a single glove and a lot of determined police work to finally bring justice to a killer who's walked free for over 3 decades.
The unsolved ones, we have to stand up
and approach these cases in a way outside the box.
Let the world know, is those out there that did commit a murder, there are people that are coming after you.
There's just a lot of good people trying to do the right thing.
Because it's something that you have to be passionate about.
Solve this. Bring some peace to the family, at least. Just doing my job.
It's just after 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning in the city of Lemon Grove, located in San Diego County. And most residents are still asleep. But for anyone up and about, looking to get an early start on the weekend, the last thing they expect to find along this quiet stretch of dirt road is a body.
He was wearing clothing, and his shirt was up above his head, and he was wearing pants, and he was wearing socks, but his shoes were missing.
Detectives arrive at the crime scene and begin with trying to identify the victim, whose face is covered.
The fact that his shirt was up over his head was unusual.
The victim has several stab wounds and his throat is being cut, which is likely the cause of death. Given the method of execution, the detectives make a key observation. There is a distinct lack of blood at the crime scene. However, they note the dirt on the victim's clothes.
He was likely dumped and dragged from his shoulders and head area, placed on the ground, and right above his arms was a single black motorcycle glove that was just laying there in the dirt.
The presence of the lone glove is strange. It may have belonged to the victim, or possibly worn by the killer. Detectives photograph the glove. Then check the body for a wallet or any form of ID, but none can be found. The victim's shoes are also missing, indicating that this may be a robbery gone wrong. A case where the victim tries to fight back and is stabbed to death as a result.
But detectives also note tire impressions near the body. The lack of blood at the crime scene and the presence of these tire tracks could indicate the victim was killed at another location. The killer then transports the body here and dumps it along this dirt road.
From about the mid-'80s to 1995, San Diego County saw an increase in homicides and violent crime that climbed above the national average.
I didn't know this myself growing up in San Diego, but homicides in the 80s were very high. That's one of the problems with this case. The homicide detectives and the homicide unit were flooded with homicides, more than the subsequent years.
Some people linked this to the growing meth problem and increased violence among rival gangs in that area. But what is certain is that homicide detectives during this period have more cases on their plate than they can possibly clear.
As a result, detectives aren't able to devote the amount of time and attention they would like to in solving a case. Follow-up interviews don't always happen. Witnesses aren't as thoroughly canvassed as they could be, and potential suspects aren't as deeply investigated as they need to be.
Well, today, San Diego is known for its bustling downtown, its shopping, restaurant, and craft beer scenes, as well as its pristine beaches. It was still developing in the 80s.
There isn't much to do after dark. Horton Plaza is built in 1985 and begins attracting some nightlife. But for the most part, downtown shuts down at the end of the business day. However, people manage to find a party and have fun wherever they can.
On October 10th, 1986, the day before the body is found, a young man named Cyrus Jefferson meets Stacy Littleton and gets invited to the hotel room of Stacy's girlfriend Echo to party. There, he meets Echo's friend, Lori.
According to the statements of Lori and Echo, they all partied, drank beer, smoked marijuana, played cards, just a hotel party with 20-year-old kids. At some point in the day, closer to the evening, both ladies say that Stacy and Cyrus leave.
This is the last time the two women will see Cyrus Jefferson. Neither Lori nor Echo know where Stacy and Cyrus are headed. But when Stacy returns to the hotel later to party, he's alone, and Cyrus's whereabouts are unknown. On October 11th, 1986, hours after a body is found in Lemon Grove, the sheriff's department gets a strange phone call from a man named Henry. Henry claims he came into possession of some goods and believes a crime took place.
He doesn't want nothing to do with this. He now has a bloody spare tire and tools from what he knows is a car where a murder likely occurred.
The sheriff's department tracks down the car that Henry says the tools come from.
And they pop the back hatch, and there's blood in there.
The sheriffs realize they'll need to get a full story if they're going to uncover what happened in the car. To do that, they'll need to speak to Henry and whoever had the car last, which just happens to be Lori and a man named Michael.
Officers keep a post on the car, while Henry, Lori, and Michael are brought in for questioning.
They interview Michael and Lori. Right away know that they have a big problem.
While detectives over in Lemon Grove are beginning their investigation into the murder of an unidentified man, Lori is in custody, telling officers how she came into possession of a car where a murder may have occurred.
The story that Lori provides to the sheriff piques his interest. She says the car belongs to a man she just met named Cyrus, and that she hasn't seen him since last night. Suddenly, the sheriff realizes that he needs to call in homicide detectives.
It doesn't take long for departments to coordinate and homicide detectives to learn the identity of their John Doe. His name is Cyrus Jefferson. With the identity of their victim revealed, detectives have one less question, but there's still a long and sordid chain of events to sort through if they have any hope of finding out who murdered Cyrus Jefferson. Cyrus Jefferson is new to the city of Lemon Grove in San Diego County, but it's his first day in town, and he's already made a friend in Stacy Littleton. Stacy brings him around to meet his girlfriend and hang out. After a few drinks and some cards, Stacy and Cyrus take off to run an errand. But several hours later, when Stacy returns, he has Cyrus's car, but no Cyrus. And when friends later find blood in the back of the car, they suspect Stacy may have killed Cyrus. Cyrus is new to the San Diego area, originally hailing from Louisiana. He's been working hard at a pizza joint, saving up money to buy a car. Meanwhile, his younger sister Sidra has been awarded a scholarship and gone off to college at Louisiana State University.
He's trying to figure himself out. He decides he doesn't want to just stay in Louisiana, he wants to look elsewhere. He had an aunt that lived in San Diego. He called his aunt and he said, "Hey, I want to come out there. I want to see what's ahead of me, what potential there is." That's what brought him from Louisiana to San Diego on that trip across America. He was growing up. He was 20 years old. He had a reliable car. He was just doing pizzas. He knew he could get a job doing pizzas in San Diego. So he reunites with his aunt, and then he says, "Hey, I'm gonna go get my car washed." So he leaves the house to go get his car washed. She expects him to come back, but she doesn't see him. That was the last time the family saw Cyrus. But fortunately for law enforcement, the story continues because we know who he ended up with.
Lori states that she's hanging out in a hotel room with her friend Echo and Echo's 1-year-old infant when Echo's boyfriend Stacy comes over to party with a new friend he allegedly just met at the park named Cyrus. The group spends the afternoon in the hotel room, drinking beer, smoking weed, and playing cards. Getting closer to evening, Lori states that Stacy and Cyrus leave, though she doesn't know where they're going.
They don't really care because Michael has been in contact with them and Michael's gonna come over. Echo was actually interested in Michael, which sounds a little convoluted because Stacy and Echo had a relationship.
While Stacy and Cyrus are gone, the two women await the arrival of Michael.
So about 3 hours later, Stacy comes back to the hotel and he's driving Cyrus's Honda Civic. They ask where Cyrus is and he says, "Oh, he let me use his car." That's the end of that. Michael shows up. Michael comes in. Stacy says, I'm gonna take Echo to the beach. We're gonna go down and party at the beach. This is like 1 o'clock in the morning. While they're at the beach, they smoke marijuana. And I know from what Echo tells me that Stacy had supplied a joint for them to smoke, and the joint was laced with PCP. So when Echo smoked the joint, she got high on PCP.
PCP, also known as angel dust, is a hallucinogenic drug taken for its mind-altering effects. These effects include visual hallucinations, sound distortions, and in some cases, violent outbursts.
She had never smoked PCP before, and she literally lost her mind.
When they get back to the hotel, Echo is frantic.
She was going crazy. She doesn't remember, but she was making a scene. This is like at 4 or 5 in the morning. The police are called and Echo is taken into custody for her own welfare.
Police take Echo to a hospital for a psychiatric evaluation and to be kept and observed overnight. What started as a party has turned into a nightmare.
Stacy says, I want to go visit Echo in the hospital. He's worried about his girlfriend, but they have the baby there.
Stacy still has Cyrus's car and suggests they take it to the hospital. Lori and Michael get in the car and wait for Stacy and the baby.
Both Lori and Michael notice blood spatter on the headliner and more blood spatter in the backseat.
They don't mention this to Stacy when he arrives.
When they get to the hospital, Stacy gets out of the car. Lori and Michael start talking about the blood spatter in the car. Where is this kid, Cyrus? What's going on? Michael starts looking around. He turns around. It's a hatchback. He turns around, looks in the back, and there's a pool of blood on the spare tire in the far back of the car. Michael's scared. Lori's scared. They start to do their own assessment of the events of the night, and they're worried that Stacy probably did something to Cyrus because there was no one else involved.
For detectives, Lori recounts why neither she nor Michael contacted police.
Stacy comes back out, and Lori said she was very nervous to ask him, but she said, basically, what in the heck? What is all this blood? And he said, maybe someone got killed. And they just zipped their lips because they were scared, to be very honest. And they were drunk and they were high and they weren't gonna call the police because now they're inside of a car with blood. So Stacy goes back to the hotel, Michael leaves, and Lori is with Stacy.
Once Stacy and Lori return to the hotel, Stacy does something totally unexpected.
Stacy says, hey, do you want this car? Lori had some difficulty with drugs and she didn't have a job. And he's offering to give her this car and she doesn't have transportation. Echo's in the hospital and Stacy's gonna leave on his own. So she actually wants the car. She wants a way to get away from here.
Stacy takes the baby back to the hotel and leaves Lori with Cyrus's car.
Lori drives to the East County of San Diego, meets back up with Michael because they want to talk about what the heck are they going to do. Now they've been in the car, they're worried about their involvement.
Both Michael and Lori are concerned that they're now caught up in a crime, possibly even a murder. But with blood literally on their hands, they fear they have nowhere to turn. Cyrus Jefferson goes missing on his first day in San Diego, and the last person to see him alive, Stacy Littleton, now has his car, and the car is covered in blood. After a night of partying and a visit to the hospital to take care of Echo, Stacy gives the car to his friend Lori. But this gift ends up being a curse, as Lori now suspects she's caught up in the middle of a murder. Lori and Michael have decided they need help, but they don't see going to the police as an option.
Michael decides to reach out to his friend Henry, who he admires, and Henry's a logical guy. They drive the car over to Henry's house, and they tell him, hey, first of all, we need to get rid of this car. And he said, why? And they said, well, check this out. And they pop the back hatch, and there's blood in there.
Henry's first thought is that Michael and Lori have committed a crime, and he threatens to call the police. But Michael asks him to listen while he explains the situation.
Henry takes the time to hear the story, and then Michael offers up, and it's kind of arbitrary, but Michael says, hey, I'm gonna get rid of this car. You want the spare tire and the tools right here? And Henry takes them, because Henry was a construction guy, and he took them. Once again, not the right action for somebody to do, but he did it.
Feeling uneasy about the situation, Henry contacts the police. He agrees to come down for an interview. Henry describes to detectives about feeling odd about the exchange and being in possession of items that may be linked to a murder. Police track down the car in East San Diego County, near the hotel where the group partied.
Detectives are beginning to get a clearer picture of Cyrus's last day, where he was and who he was with. But there's the unaccounted 3-hour period when he was alone in the car with Stacy. To fill in that time gap, they're going to have to bring Stacy in for questioning as a suspect.
So they tow the car into evidence, and they process the car for evidence, and they start the search warrant for Stacy's house. They talk to Echo, they talk to Lori, they talk to Michael, they talk to Henry, and based on their statements, they get the search warrant. They take Stacy into custody.
Suspect Stacy Littleton is questioned, but tells detectives that he doesn't know what happened to Cyrus.
Stacy says that Cyrus had received a paycheck. I don't know how he had this paycheck. That was $125. Stacy was going with Cyrus to cash that paycheck.
Stacy claims that afterwards, Cyrus gave him his car. When questioned about the blood, he provides no explanation, but denies that he killed Cyrus.
You have to remember this is 1986, and there is no way of testing the blood to verify the victims using forensic science. As long as Stacy keeps his mouth shut, there's nothing concrete connecting the blood in the car to him.
While it may seem obvious to detectives that Stacy Littleton is involved in the murder of Cyrus Jefferson, they know that the district attorney is going to need more than just circumstantial evidence and belief to convince a jury.
For officers to make arrests, they need a probable cause, which is at least 50% likelihood that the suspect has committed a crime.
The problem with getting it into court is you have to get beyond reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is a much higher bar. There is no percentage based on it, but you're talking to 12 ordinary citizens who may or may not know anything about law enforcement, and you have to convince them that the evidence you have, the statements made, everything makes this guy, beyond a reasonable doubt, the suspect. That's the bar for the district attorney. That's why the district attorney rejected the case.
Without a witness or any further evidence, detectives can only hypothesize about what happens in the 3 hours between Stacy and Cyrus leaving the hotel together and Stacy returning alone. They have no choice but to release Stacy.
A couple of days later, Echo's mom goes down to the station to retrieve Stacy's things that police took into evidence during their search warrant.
They collected all his clothes, they went through his house, they collected evidence. He's been cleared because the district attorney, they're not filing charges. They could later file charges. Property evidence checked with the homicide detectives for whatever reason, whether the homicide detectives were too busy, didn't think about it, or for whatever reason, I don't know. They authorized the release of that physical evidence from the property evidence room.
Police have a viable suspect in the murder of Cyrus Jefferson, but without additional evidence or the resources to pursue Stacy Littleton further, detectives are forced to shelve it while they deal with other cases.
That's one of the problems with this case, or why this case ended up as a cold case, is the homicide detectives and the homicide unit were flooded with homicides more than the subsequent years.
Detectives have good reason to believe Stacy Littleton brutally murdered Cyrus Jefferson, but for now they have no choice but to let their prime suspect walk free. Detectives hear a story from Lori, Michael, and Henry that all points to one suspect, Stacy Littleton. But Stacy denies having anything to do with Cyrus's murder. But with no witnesses or substantial evidence, the district attorney fears that a jury would acquit Stacy Littleton, and they decide not to try the case. It becomes a cold case for over 30 years.
I went to a Thanksgiving dinner, and I knew I was slated to become the next cold case detective, and I sat next to my lieutenant. And my lieutenant is talking to me and very friendly, and he says, "Hey, are you ready to come over to cold case? You ready for that step?" And he goes, "I really need you to solve a case." And I said, "Well, of course, that's why I'm coming there." And he said, "No, you don't understand. Cold cases are very hard to solve, and it's been a couple of years since this agency has solved one." And he said, "I know they're working hard. I know that they're doing everything they can to solve these crimes. But we really need somebody in there, gung-ho, to get busy and get one solved." I took that on as kind of a challenge, right? So that was Thanksgiving, you go through Christmas, I get the call, you're going to cold case, and within a week or two, I get this message, call Cyrus Jefferson, about her brother's 1986 cold case.
Cyrus's younger sister, Sidra, has been calling the cold case division at least once a year in an effort to keep her brother's case alive.
So on a professional level, I was ready to go. I was going to solve every case that I touched. But on top of that, then I get the emotional part from the family. That family is just amazing. They're the sweetest people. And this case kills them.
Detective Troy Dugal doesn't want to give Sidra any false hope that her brother's case can be solved, but he promises her he'll do everything within his power to bring justice for Cyrus.
First thing I did was I went down to the crime lab, which was in the same building as the homicide unit, and I pulled all the evidence that was available for this case, and I reviewed it. I opened every package, I looked at it, I got a physical understanding of what evidence I could lay in front of a jury. I resealed it, and then I went back and reviewed the case again to see where that evidence came from, what potential that evidence had. And the glove was interesting to me from the very beginning. I was like, why a motorcycle glove? And the obvious answer is maybe somebody wore motorcycle gloves to hide their fingerprints, because in 1986, DNA was not an issue in law enforcement. But fingerprints were a big issue. So if you were wearing gloves, it would hide your fingerprints. I read through all the reports, and there was really no mention of the glove. I looked through more of the photographs, and they did collect the glove, but once again, there was no mention of it, no testing of it. And I started to just use my experience and training and what I had seen in the past. And I knew circumstantially from Cyrus's body position, the fact that the shirt was over the head, his arms were up above his head, and then the motorcycle glove was above his arms, not near his hands. Didn't come off his hands. It was just laying there.
Something about the placement of Cyrus's body and the shirt covering his face catches Detective Dugal's attention.
So I made an interpretation that he was likely dumped and dragged from his shoulders and head area, placed on the ground, and then either the suspect, because of the dragging motion, the shirt went up over the head, or the suspect knew him, and that'll happen where a suspect wants to cover the face of the decedent because they have some consciousness and they don't want to see the face of the person they just killed.
If Detective Dugal's theory is right, the killer was known to the victim. According to statements from the family, Cyrus was new to the area and didn't know anyone except for Stacy, the friend he just made.
If Stacy and Cyrus were in the car together, then the tire tracks photographed at the scene are likely from Cyrus's car. Though nothing in the evidence file shows that detectives confirmed that his car was at the scene of the crime. But as Detective Dugal tracks down all the remaining evidence in the case, he makes a grim discovery.
The car, because there was no pending trial, it sat stored forever, and it was basically sold to a towing company, and the towing company destroyed it. So I lost my crime scene from a cold case detective point of view. So a lot of problems with the case.
Detective Dugal also discovers that days after Stacy Littleton is released from custody, his girlfriend's mother goes down to evidence and requests the items taken from his place in the search warrant. Dugal is surprised to learn that the evidence is released to Echo's mom. But the destroyed car and missing clothes aren't the only gaps in the case.
I did notice a few issues when we process a suspect. We take many, many photographs of the suspect from every angle. And we definitely focus on hands and body for injuries and stuff. And we have the suspect hold their hands out and flip them over and have their fingers splayed so that we can see everything, so we can see injuries. I noticed in the photographs of Stacy Littleton that he had his hands together pinched and actually overlapped. That concerned me because he could be hiding an injury.
With a lot of the evidence in this case either released or destroyed, it leaves Dugal with very little to go on 31 years later. But he isn't deterred. He has a hunch that the black motorcycle glove may be a crucial piece of overlooked evidence.
And I didn't know whose glove it was, I didn't know why it was there, but I anticipated that Stacy likely wore it to hide his fingerprints. So that was a critical piece of evidence. I knew then that I now had a potential piece of evidence that could get us over the reasonable doubt.
The glove is sent away to be tested for DNA, a test that didn't exist back in 1986, one which will hopefully blow the case wide open.
Detective Dugal knows he can't put all his hope in the glove, as it may not return any results. He turns his attention to the witness interviews and notices that they're surprisingly brief, most of them lasting only about 20 minutes.
The interviews were, in my opinion, good interviews, but very short. They didn't go into details, so if there was something that was open-ended, if I'm doing an interview and somebody gives me an open-ended statement saying, I went to 7-Eleven, 2 hours later I was back at the hotel. Well, what you should do is go back and say, tell me about those 2 hours.
He decides to track down everyone who gave statements in 1986 and re-interview them, this time more thoroughly. Detective Dugal now faces the daunting task of trying to track down everybody who was there the night of Cyrus's murder over 30 years ago. On October 11th, 1986, the body of Cyrus Jefferson is discovered in Lemon Grove, a small city in San Diego County. All signs point to Stacy Littleton as the killer, but with limited evidence and no eyewitnesses, detectives have to let him go free. Now, over 3 decades later, Detective Dugal is working the case for any clues or statements that might have been overlooked. But tracking down those involved is proving to be harder than expected. Detective Dugal's search for Henry, Michael, Echo, and especially Lori is exhaustive.
There's Lorraine. Lori, that was 2017, she was homeless. I had to go find her in a tent. None of this was easy.
But eventually, he's able to track them all down and conduct new interviews with them.
As I filled those gaps, the case got a little stronger. Not great, just based on statements alone would not have gotten us over probable cause. but it definitely strengthened the circumstantial evidence of the statements. And the people remembered because back then, they were all young, they were all together, they realized there was a murder being investigated, they were all scared, and they were protective of each other. Especially Henry, when he was interviewed back then, told an absolute lie because he was trying to protect Michael, not knowing what Michael would say. He didn't want Michael exposed at all. Now, 30 years later, he hasn't even seen Michael in 30 years, and now he's free. His conscience is clear. He's gonna tell me exactly what he remembers, and he's no longer protecting friends. And that helps. That helps in the 30-year-old interview.
Lori is likewise more cooperative and less concerned about protecting her friends now that 3 decades have passed.
My interviews in 2017 were closer to an hour for each person. I had the advantage of hearing the old interview, knowing the story, being able to ask questions that would fill the gaps, but also their memory, their recollection, and their lack of desire to protect their friends brought a bolder statement. For instance, in 1986, I think Lori said when Stacy came out of the hospital, he said, maybe somebody got killed in here. 2017, she says, somebody got killed. Stacy told her somebody got killed. Well, there was nobody else involved. So now going back to what I need for court, the statements got better. That alone isn't the new thing that can make a cold case better unless they admit to a confession or hearing a confession.
The statements provide a clearer picture of what happened the day of Cyrus's murder, October 11th, 1986. All signs point to Stacy Littleton as the killer, but this is still insufficient for the DA to reopen the case and try Stacy Littleton. A piece of evidence, a confession, or a witness is still needed. Then, in April 2017, Detective Dugal gets a phone call that will change everything.
And then the crime lab DNA gal calls me and she says, Troy, you won't believe it. 30 years later, I've got the DNA in the glove, and it's Cyrus and Stacy. And now I've got this glove by the victim with the suspect's DNA in it, and that's awesome. So there's my piece of evidence that was just the golden nugget. It didn't absolutely prove or disprove anything, but it put Stacy in that glove, and the glove was at the crime scene where the body was dumped. And there's a lot of explanation there. How does that happen?
Detective Dugal now believes he has enough evidence to convince the DA to go after Stacy Littleton.
And I would constantly say, this is what I got, here's the new stuff, and he'd say, that ain't enough. Here's the new stuff, that ain't enough. Because he's working through his mind that reasonable doubt that a jury has to get over. And when I called him and said, I got that glove at the crime scene, Stacy's DNA, he said, that's enough for an arrest warrant, let's go.
Detective Dugal doesn't have to look far to track down Stacy Littleton. He's already serving time at San Diego County Central Jail for drug and drug paraphernalia possession.
Stacy waives his Miranda rights and decides to give Detective Dugal a statement.
I go down to the jail and I interview him, and he gives me a statement that differed from his 1986 statement. His 1986 statement was ludicrous, to be honest with you. When he was arrested, he talked in 1986. But he said in those hours he was gone, they drove up to LA and met some gang member who was selling drugs, and that gang member gave him money. But in 1986, one of the statements that Stacy says that nobody else talks about is, he says that Cyrus had received a paycheck. Whether that was mailed to him, I don't know how he had this paycheck, but Stacy said that Cyrus had a paycheck that was $125. Stacy was going with Cyrus to cash that paycheck. That brought money into the issue. I believe the motivation for the murder, unfortunately, was that cash and potentially the car. And I think Stacy, once he got the car, realized it is the scene of the crime, so he wanted to get rid of the car and gave it to Lori.
Detective Dugal notices a scar on Littleton's hand and questions him about it.
And when I ask him about the injury on his finger, he shows me and he's got a scar on his pinky that he was definitely hiding back then. I asked him how he got that scar, and he says, I got the scar in a fight. I also broke my finger. And I said, you got the cut and a broken finger in a fight. Was that during the murder of Cyrus? And he goes, I don't know. It wasn't no. It wasn't, I'll tell you about the fight that caused this. It was, I don't know. Does that make him guilty? No, but all these things start piling up.
Finally, Detective Dugal moves on to the glove containing Littleton's DNA.
It was golden because he denies ever wearing a glove. He never saw a glove. Just a lot of, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it, that kind of thing.
Detective Dugal has now caught Stacy in a lie. The DNA evidence proves that he did wear the glove, the likely explanation being to cover up any fingerprints.
Given Littleton's contradictory interview, in combination with the new physical evidence against him, Detective Dugal is confident that Stacy Littleton killed Cyrus Jefferson. Detective Dugal calls Cyrus's sister Sidra, finally with some good news.
I called her and told her he was arrested, and then I asked her if I could come visit her and talk to her, and she was thrilled. People sometimes go, well, why is a detective flying to the victim's house? She was in Houston, Texas. Why are you going to the victim's family's house? Well, she's got information for me still. I have questions for her. I want more background on Cyrus. I want to know if anybody in the family ever heard of Stacy Littleton. A lot of questions, and I want to do that in person. And there's a huge satisfaction in sitting with the victim's family and saying, I did this, I worked hard, and we've come to a conclusion, and all of us should be very happy. She was thrilled.
With the collection of new statements, including Stacy's contradictory account, as well as new physical evidence in the case, the DA takes it to trial.
On July 3rd, 2018, after a 2-week trial and 11 hours of deliberation over 3 days, a jury convicts Stacy Littleton of killing Cyrus Jefferson with a knife. Stacy Littleton is sentenced on August 6th, 2018, and receives a sentence of 25 years to be served on top of the sentence he's currently serving for drug possession.
I think he spent 2 years, 3 years, and he died in custody. This case had the potential to be solved, obviously, because I was able to solve it. That doesn't mean that other investigators couldn't solve this. They could. The reason it was solved was timing, Cidra's determination to call the homicide unit, my availability to dive into the case, because right after this case, genetic genealogy became a very big issue in the sheriff's department, and we changed our focus to the cold cases which had genetic genealogy potential. This one didn't. So this one would have been not pushed aside, but lowered on a priority because it wasn't a genetic genealogy case. So Cidra's right. God reached down and said, let's solve this one.
Due to the tireless work of Detective Dugal and the DNA evidence found in the glove that investigators preserved for over 3 decades, Cyrus Jefferson's family finally has justice.
I want the families of victims who have cold cases to understand that there is a potential for solving the case in the future. I've solved many, and after that, I've solved 5 more. So that's very rewarding for all those people who had gotten no closure for many years, and now the case comes to fruition and they find somebody, or we know who the suspect is. Sometimes in cold case, your suspect is deceased. That happens. It's happened to a couple of those 5 I solved. And sometimes they're still alive and doing well. And you would never guess that they committed a murder 20 or 30 years ago.